And I'm fine with these things being a mystery. You know, it's not, I need to know everything and I'm supposed to and I'm better. It's to where some of this is where you deliberately can't tell, and that's fine. But I believe there's also enough information that when it happens at the time, you'll be like, okay, that's how it happened. Like there's no way we would have known before, but now that we see it, that's what that was. And so the pale horse, which a lot of people call the horse of death, instead of it being 1/4 of the Earth population completely dies from the four different things, it's talking about 1/4 of the Earth region will be affected. And that's what it looks like it is anyway. And I don't know if that would be man made or natural. It could be a major solar activity, a combination. And once more, North America seems vulnerable because there are many reasons that they want to subdue us in order for globalism to happen. And so then your fifth seal is your tribulation martyrs. They're crying out from under the throne. By now we are in the tribulation, which means that it may have started earlier, which would have been like the third or the fourth seal. And then Revelation 13, it seems to spell out the 70th week of Daniel with a separation of each half. So there would be 3.5, a midway point, and another 3.5. So the first half does include martyrs and 10 kingdoms and a beast system. The second half includes to be what appears to be an upgrade. And I'm matching this upgrade that now, like you didn't have before, you have a 666 with a mark. And you still have the persecution and everything with the church. But the second half seems to be like a 2.0. And so I'm looking at this halfway point of the abomination of desolation with the image of the beast. I'm thinking it's just going to be the natural AI upgrade point, but it also may coincide with people are resisting and escaping, and we can't have it like we need it. We need it better, so we're going to introduce a better, and then that's what they do at the halfway point. And seal number 6 is the heavenly cataclysm in which the Lamb appears, and it seems to match events in 3 of the Gospels, and it's defined in 2 of the Gospels as, quote, immediately after the tribulation. It says immediately after the tribulation of those days. It talks about changes in the sun, the moon, and looks like stars are falling from the sky, and either the sign of the Son of Man in the clouds. It completely matches what's described in the 6th seal in Revelation. So that's when I'm thinking angels are collecting believers at the 6th seal in Revelation. So seal number 7 announces the wrath. And that's that's why I believe that both the trumpets and the bowls of the vials of wrath, both of them are the wrath. And that's the wrath of the 7th seal. So technically, when it starts out with the scroll that's sealed up with seals that no one is worthy to look on, even, um, it's all contained in the 7 seals. As far as you thinking that, are all the trumpets and bowls too much to put after the tribulation? Like, shouldn't they be in there somewhere? Well, they're all in the seals. Technically, they're all in the seals. They're all just the 7th seal. There's also a transgression of desolation in Daniel that allows time for some wrath before the Battle of Armageddon. So I should get into more details on that later. It's probably too much for right now. So in the very next chapter after the seals are described, if in the seals you have went through 4 horsemen preparing for the Antichrist, and then you've went through a tribulation of 7 years, and then you have went through a rapture with a cataclysm at the 6th seal. Then what is described in the next chapter after the seals, it says, and one of the elders answered, saying unto me, what are these which are arrayed in white robes? And whence came they? And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, these are they which came out of great tribulation, and have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. This description is found in chapter 7, after the seals chapter, which was chapter 6, but before the description of the trumpets begin in chapter 8. So between your seals chapter and your trumpets chapter, you have this description in that middle of that chapter 7 of this discussion of who are all these people. They're the ones who came out of they suddenly appear in heaven and they came out of a great tribulation. And the reason I'm pointing this out too is that a lot of teachers like to try to say that Revelation has this or don't have this or this appears at this time and so that's proof of this or that. So just as much or even more than things they point out, this is never pointed out. It's never pointed out that right after your sixth seal rapture, probably, you have all these people appear in heaven arrayed in white robes who came out of a great tribulation. There's all these people. They could have come before, they could have come after the tribulation when they're raptured by the angels and before the wrath is poured out. So why is this never, in all of the little pointing out of things in Revelation of what's there and not there, have you ever heard of this? And why not? This may be another hint that tribulation and rapture is now over and the wrath begins. And so the next thing you have is your 7 trumpets. The early trumpets include what appears to be the post-cataclysm events in heaven. Another thing that kind of throws people off, I don't blame them, is the way that the cataclysm is described. The way the cataclysm is described with the sun and the moon changing so drastically, stars falling, a lot of people read that and they say that's the end of the whole world. Period. The end. Done. Over with. And that's another, I mean, maybe that's true, but like I keep saying, we don't really know for sure. Things haven't happened yet. But I've noticed that it's stumped places like that that keep people from being able to put anything else together. They're like, as soon as they assumed that that meant the whole world stopped, it's hard to make anything else make sense after that. Because then you're like, but that's before the thing, and it's not over here, and this is not like that, and it don't make sense anymore. And they can't put anything else together. So that's another indicator to me that points toward the whole world didn't end then. It just looked like a cataclysm of a binary passing through or something. And that's whenever your sun would turn completely dark because a binary system would be pulling all the photons off the sun. Now it's black and everything else is red, like the moon is blood red. And so that makes a little better sense to me. Maybe that would also make a lot of meteor showers, like stars are completely falling. So that's another thing that points toward that this description of the changes in the sun and moon and stars right here is not the very end. It's not Armageddon. It's not the white horses returning behind Jesus' white horse. It's not the destruction of the Antichrist. Because if you try to put that at the very, very end where his feet touch down on Mount Olive and everything splits and water comes through, it doesn't fit. No one can ever make it fit. But if you put it as a big event happens, and then in these first trumpets, you still have the world so messed up from a cataclysm that it's affecting a third of your moon, a third of your skies, a third of your daylight, and a third of this and that in the heavens, and wormwood comes and hits the ocean because it's a cataclysm with a lot of meteor showers and stuff like that coming through, and an angel does come throw it down too. That makes better sense that things are still happening after this huge cataclysm. Things are still happening. And once more, that level of cataclysm with Jesus in the clouds with great glory and the church removed stops the tribulation. That is what people don't like to hear. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But that's probably what stops the 7-year tribulation. The cataclysm at that level to where the world's probably tilted a third of the way, affecting the stars and the heavenly bodies still into the first of the trumpets. Anyway, angels are collecting believers. That stops the tribulation because not only are there not saints here to do a tribulation on, even though some people probably see it and repent and get saved, and that's why later on the angels and the trumpets are saying, don't touch the ones with the mark of God. That stops the tribulation because now the Antichrist is not effective either because you have so much going on, I believe. That's when the wrath comes. People were running for the hills saying, hide us from the one on the throne. So that stops the tribulation. early trumpets look like a cataclysm just happened. So the last three trumpets, though, are the woes. And those look to me like supernatural wars. Because people have been like, these locusts could be helicopters as far as the supernatural events and the woes. I'm not judging people and laughing. The last woe is the actual bowls of wrath. So those two woes are locust out of the pit with Abaddon of Revelation 9:11, of the Abaddon that assaulted me, and it's not fun at all, trust me. So Revelation 9/11, you have locusts coming out of the pits that people say could be helicopters. They're trying to turn these two first woes into what do we have nowadays with modern technology that could be that's assaulting people. And I've come to think, and I found other people teaching, that that's probably, most likely, all supernatural at this point. And some people think maybe even something unlocked with the seals, where things are way more unsealed and supernatural on the earth. The pit does literally open. The 200 million man army, a lot of people said for a long time that's probably China because they have so many people. And so now we're learning that China doesn't really have all those people. They're lying. So maybe it could be India. I'm still leaning with these are supernatural wars. Probably. These first two woes, I'm leaning toward those are supernatural wars. After that, you have your last woe is the bowls of wrath. In between the description and revelation of trumpets, bowls, vials, and seals, you have in between chapters. And sometimes I think they're not necessarily in order anymore. They're just giving you overall themes of spiritual things of that time or heavenly events. 7 bowls of wrath, pure scourge of wrath upon the earth and beast system. All the world systems are completely purged before Babylon burns in 1 hour. So, kind of the way I see the bowls of wrath. And then the way I see that is you've had your trumpets are like your transition between the cataclysm happened and Jesus is about to come back. And if you put in there the transgression of desolation, there's about 1,100 days for that to happen. So you've got almost 3 years there, I think. So that's where Jesus appears in the clouds, and then 1,100 days later he appears on the white horse with all the saints behind him. And a lot of people see that in the Bible, but they think Jesus appears in the cloud before tribulation, then it's the 7 years before he appears on the white horse. So I think what they're getting correct on their theory is there's 2 different appearances of the Lord, but they're getting it wrong like what it appears around. But the bowls of wrath look like what's going on there is you have the transition of the trumpets, and then you have bowls of wrath poured out to basically subdue and scorch and shut down the beast system. Like I said, I believe that the rapture and the appearance and the cataclysm stopped the tribulation, and now the world is being shut down and subdued because the Lord's coming back for his reign. And that is what a lot of teachers believe begins the day of the Lord, by the way, is immediately after the cataclysm is the day of the Lord, because now the earth is there's a preparation time before he comes and sets his feet down. Part of that preparation is the bowls of wrath. The bowls of wrath are poured out, and toward the very end of that, or even after that time, you have Babylon burns toward the end. That looks like the timing. So the bowls of wrath is upon the earth, the beast system, and the world systems completely purged before Babylon burns in 1 hour, and Jesus appears for Armageddon. There is a time space allowed in Daniel's transgression of desolation for a few years between the 7-year tribulation and Armageddon. That's whenever wrath will be poured out. And so I do have some few questions here and there about different timing of things. Like I'm not sure when the 2 witnesses appear. It seems like they appear at the mid-trib point. But this has been my best understanding of how it all happens. If angels are collecting the believers that remain after, like right after the tribulation, the angels collect believers, and that's the rapture, when Jesus appears in the clouds with great glory. Then later, at a second time, the saints appear with Jesus on white horses for Armageddon. This is the permanent return of Christ to the earth. This would explain these 2 appearances. And I said that also, that part too. Some people teach multiple raptures. Instead, I see it in the verses that Jesus appears in the clouds. And Matthew and Mark says he appears in the clouds quote, immediately after the tribulation. And then later on, it seems like that's when he comes back with the white horse with all the saints behind him. Collecting saints in the air with angels seems different than all the saints behind him on white horses. And there's a lot of teachers with all sorts of rapture ideas and timing ideas that have the same understanding of that part. And another description that puts a rapture immediately or after a tribulation is in Revelation 20. Revelation 20 is starting to describe the millennial 1,000 year reign. It says that it describes that people who died in the tribulation are now ruling with Christ for 1,000 years. So if you died in the tribulation, you're ruling with Christ. So they also say this is the first resurrection. So now you logically go to the resurrection. If you had a resurrection before the tribulation, how are these the people who died in the tribulation? So that first resurrection must come during or after the tribulation. And it's these kinds of logical puzzles that lead a lot of pre-trib rapture people to start saying, well, now I'm more mid-trib. Or maybe I'm pre-wrath and it's into the trib somewhat. Because these are the kind of puzzles that you cannot solve with a pre-trib rapture. A lot of times when people start looking deeper into it, they read a book or they compare the verses for themselves, they run into these puzzles and they become mid-tribbers. Because they're still not post-trib. I'm not blaming them. They're still not post-trib, but they're like, okay, pre-trib don't quite work. Something's missing. That seems to not work. So they compromise and they say, let's go mid-trib because that makes better sense now. Not blaming them because they're getting closer, but I think what people are missing, and I don't blame them for this either, what they're missing is there's a time frame, and there's teachers teaching this other than me before I even found it. There's a time frame that allows for tribulation, rapture, wrath poured out. There's your mid-trib, quote, pre-wrath, is that you immediately after the tribulation of those days, and you can be caught up, and then wrath is poured out. And I still may not have everything perfectly even tied down, but this makes the most sense to me. And I only wish that more people, if this is what's going on, that people would be able to have access to that understanding in case it helps someone in when they're being persecuted. So, in Revelation 20, people who died in the tribulation rule with Christ, and that's the first resurrection. If that's meant to be taken very literally, the first resurrection does not happen before the tribulation. I also don't mind sharing things like this. I'm glad when people do, because there needs to just be a common discussion that people honestly believed different ways. They weren't being mean and laughing and mocking and laughing at people that weren't tough enough to be going through the tribulation. And not everybody who is a pre-trib rapture is being selfish and willful and trying to escape anything harmful. They're not being soft or weak. Because I know some people that they honestly think they see pre-trib in the verse, but they're also preparing for very hard times. And they say, hey, we could go through a whole invasion and a war and bombings and everything and cancer and heaven forbid. And they've already gone through horrible things, but so people honestly, this is something to have in the discussion. People can honestly think they see things in the scriptures. So it's a matter of, should we even have a conversation that we see it differently then? Will it cause too much arguing? Or as the time gets closer, is there a benefit for there to at least be an understanding that people honestly see things very differently? That's like people that are trying to say you're blaspheming or hate you or curse you because you say you see it differently. It's silly. I know that people see things differently, and I don't say they're evil, but they say, some people, the guy who attacked me says that I'm evil and I need to have horrible things because I see it differently. Anyway, in case you're at a time where you're like, man, these things are happening on the earth, we should have been raptured. You won't be as easily tricked that I missed the rapture, I'm not even saved. Things like that. My thing is about preventing the deception, like the fake alien demon thing. And of course, don't ever take a mark, a number, and a name. Don't be tricked into it by thinking you missed the rapture, or don't worry, we haven't been raptured, we can take this one. That kind of thinking. So, the 2000s, that was my kind of discussion on the 1990s and the seals. So now we're into the world events of the 2000s, and the stage one of desperate globalist takeover for the new millennium is what I call that. This is the desperate globalist takeover time, is 2000s.